We'll at least give us some purpose here. All right. Cool, cool. All right. Well, good evening, Wyoming. Great to have you here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for joining me. I am Joseph Kibler, your 2026 candidate for Wyoming governor. Real, raw, and ask me anything tonight. I've got John and Joey also here on Zoom with me as well. And I've got a ton of questions from the community of Cheyenne that they were so gracious as to ask me today. And so I will be going through those questions along with questions from Joey and John. And it should be a really, really fun night. Try to keep it lighthearted and good, and hope you guys just enjoy watching this Ask Me Anything live stream. And if you happen to be watching, feel free to go ahead and leave a comment, share, whatever you want to do. And I will try to answer those questions live if I can. But before we get started, I want to start out with kind of a fun question. And this question came from Michael down here in Cheyenne. As well, most of the questions today will come from folks here in Cheyenne, but also would love to get questions from you all across the state. So with that, the first question Michael asked me is, can we build a border between Colorado and Wyoming? And can we also deport all of the Jackson Hole residents? Well, Michael, I consider myself an idealistic person by nature, but I don't think that we can create our own country out of Wyoming. So we probably won't be able to build a wall. And let's see, deport the Jackson Hole residents. I think that we all have ideas like this. It would be like really great if we could just kind of put all of the blue people in one place and all of the red people in another place and call it good. But let's face it, this is America, right? We allow for diverse culture, ideas, thoughts. And so while our blue friends in Jackson Hole, Wyoming may not be the very small portion of our state, I don't think we can deport those folks unless, of course, maybe they're not here legally. Then maybe we could send some of our fine folks over there to take care of that. Otherwise, if they're here legally, well, I guess they're going to be here to stay, and we're going to just have to learn how to get along with them. And so that's what we're going to do, Michael. Thank you for that fun question to start out the show today. I really, really appreciate that. And the next question is going to come from Julie and Paula actually asked a very similar question. And they're talking about, Joseph, what do we do about the cost of living? And that is a very deep and difficult question that I'm taking as my second question for the day, because this is not just a local Wyoming issue. This is a national issue, or maybe even perhaps a global issue. We all know that COVID kind of turned our world upside down when it comes to cost of living. And we've got people moving from expensive places to live, and they're migrating to cheaper places to live, right? Like Wyoming, Tennessee, Florida, not really Florida anymore, Texas, Georgia, South Carolina. You got people fleeing these spots where, it costs, $900 for electricity every month, and they're coming to places like Wyoming. And so this is really a national issue. But what can we do about cost of living? I think there's a couple of things that we can do. The Trump administration is working on some of that, and some of our legislature and some of our current leadership working on some of this. We can certainly do a couple of things. One, let's open up our energy, right? We can definitely open up energy and drive energy costs down. Now, why do I bring up energy when it comes to cost of living? Because everything related to our cost of living, for the most part, is tied to energy in some way. Whether it's the milk in the grocery store or the bag of fertilizer at Home Depot or, the Murdoch's chicken feed. It's all tied to energy in some way. The cost to ship those goods, to bring those goods to you, the cost and the overhead to keep those store lights on and everything. So one big thing we can do is we've got to look at ways to reduce energy costs. That should trickle down to a lot of our daily costs. I've got a lot of friends who tell me that their energy outside of Wyoming, they're paying $1,000 a month for electricity. No joke. We are still really blessed here in Wyoming, but the cost of living, it's tough, right? It's gotten double what it was 5, 6 years ago, even. And so I think we start there with some basic things like what's under the hood? It's not about lowering those egg prices per se. What's under the hood of those egg prices and causing those increases? And I think that that's what's really, really important when it looks like about lowering the cost of living. Now let's talk about affordable housing, which is something that Julie and Paula were also worried about. So we have this beautiful, lovely capitalistic society that we all live in, and I think that we should appreciate it. And we got to understand that capitalism is part of why things go up and down. And we don't want to stifle those things, right, you guys? And there's a lot of factors affecting housing. Besides mass migration from expensive places to cheaper places, what about short-term rentals? Okay, we have over 2.5 million homes in the US right now that are currently being used as a short-term rental, right? But this is capitalism, you guys. So some of this is things that we shouldn't control as a free society. But what if we had those 2.5 million houses on the market? Well, that would certainly help bring the cost of affordable housing down. But you also look at the cost of goods. So all of the great new homes that we're building right now here in around Cheyenne, outside of Cheyenne, the homes, the new construction that's happening across the country. Well, guess what? Construction goods have doubled, tripled in some cases in the last 4 or 5 years. So you have that affecting the housing market as well. How do we bring the cost of goods down? I'm going to circle back around energy. If we can bring the cost to produce those goods down, a lot of that has to do with energy. Obviously, some of that has to do with labor and other factors, the federal government and regulations and rules and things like that. We can bring the cost of these things down, you guys, but it's not going to happen overnight. And it's going to require strong leadership with strong vision going, we're going to go ahead and do this. And so, with that, I want to go ahead and answer what was a pretty easy question because it kind of ties into this. And that is, Kelly asked, would you stand up for the state? And I think she's mostly referring to bowing to the federal government when it comes to, mandates. Hey, close your state down because of COVID. My answer to that was an easy one. In fact, this is one of the easiest questions I have to answer tonight. And that is that the people of Wyoming will decide if we're going to do that or not, if we're going to shut down the state or not. That's going to be up to the people of Wyoming and strong leadership, right? We are not going to shut this state down. Kelly had mentioned Kristi Noem and how she had refused to follow the federal mandates to shut down. And that's what she would have in me. I will not do that, unless, again, it would have to be the people of the state that decide along with the government and go, hey, guys, because let's face it, serious situations can happen. I think we could all agree on that serious situations can happen. And we need to be prepared to face those situations. But no, we're not shutting down a state again for a COVID. It's circumstantial. But the answer for the COVID thing is absolutely not. My answer would have been different to that. We would not have been shutting down Wyoming Energy during COVID. Okay, we would have kept energy flowing, which artificially raised rates in energy across the nation, right? Because we were shutting down our energy production. So hopefully that answers your question, Kelly. Travis asked about health and food ingredients, about MAHA, Make America Healthy Again. And he wanted to know, would I be willing to lead the country and the state with conservative values as it pertains to MAGA and MAHA? And my answer to that is, first of all, and I know not everyone's going to love this answer, Wyoming, 80% of us, or almost 80% of us, voted for Donald Trump a couple of months ago. We said that we want the MAGA agenda. We want the MAHA agenda. We want to be healthy and we want to be whole. And some states are already jumping on that and getting ahead of it. Like West Virginia is banning artificial dyes in their food. Absolutely. That is the governor I want health. Hey, you guys, they're not even allowed. We have thousands of ingredients in our food in America that are literally illegal to put in food in Europe. And guess what? They have our cereals, they have our products in their stores. They just don't have all of these horrible ingredients in them. So I'm on board with that. Let's get rid of these horrible ingredients in our food. Honestly, though, that I'd like to see that happen at the federal level, which it will be happening with Mr. Kennedy, hopefully, and with Maha, in charge of the Department of Health. So hopefully we'll be seeing that coming down from the federal level, and we won't be having to make a ton of extra legislation, here in Wyoming regarding these issues. But yeah, absolutely, we can address those issues. Let's be healthy. A lot of us know somebody or personally know that we're dealing with health issues directly tied to the food that we eat and the poisons that we put on our food and in our food. So I think that that's really, really important. I appreciate that question from Travis as well. You guys, I know I've got a couple of people live here on Zoom. I'm gonna go ahead. I want to just give them a quick minute. John or Joey, did you guys have any questions that you guys would like to ask me? And John, you'll have to unmute if you want to. And then Joey, yeah, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So I've been doing research on you. I'm assuming you're running on Republican tickets.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, and we've updated the website and the social media graphics to actually note that fact. There was a little bit of confusion on that. I purposefully wanted to kind of mix up the culture a little bit. And what I mean by that is I want people to vote for me if they choose me as their candidate because of the content of my character, the vision and the solutions that I bring to the table, not the R or the D after my name. Now, yes, I've been a conservative Republican my entire life. Since I was 18 years old, I voted that way. I believed in that. I've supported those values. Anybody that's known me for any amount of time knows that I'm as conservative and principled as you can get. But I want to kind of switch up the culture a little bit in politics, John, to be honest. I am part of we're so dissatisfied with our leaders, right, John? And the reason we're dissatisfied with our leaders, by and large, is because we vote just based on the R or the D after someone's name as a whole. Now, there are very educated people in our committees and in caucuses and stuff across the state who do their homework, right? But the majority of us go to the polls and we go, oh, there's an R. I'm going to circle that, or I'm going to fill that in. Or look, there's a D. I'm going to circle that. I'm going to fill that in. And what we don't do, we don't know anything about them. We don't know about their character, their vision, the solutions they bring to the table, or anything. So part of the reason why, obviously that is now in my campaign, it's on my website, it's on my social media, but part of the reason why I'm not front and center on that is because I want people to vote for me, not because of the R and the D after my name. So hopefully that answers that question for you. Joe, you got any questions?
Well, I don't know if that was all of John's question, but if it was, John, you got anything else?
Nope.
Asking if he's a Republican? All right.
Okay, yeah.
Well, a quick follow-up to John's question. I understand the concept of wanting to be the candidate for the people, that the people choose based on who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Wyoming is a primary election state that normally dictates how the rest of the race is going to go.
Yeah.
In a lot of these races. And we do have a crossover voting prohibition. So with your recent answer, are you asking people to preemptively cross over to vote Republican? Or, how does that work with the law? The system. We still have the law that says.
Right. Yeah. Joey, I have not, chosen at this point, and you and I spoke about this, what flavor of Republican, that I'm going to really represent in Wyoming. I think that all of us as just regular people have some dissatisfaction with all of our primary parties, right? And we have some angst. And I'm just being honest here, Joey, because that's how I'm going to roll through this whole thing. This is not, this is just coming out of my heart here. I think that we have things that we like about our party as conservatives and Republicans. And I think that we also, and I have some questions that I'm going to answer a little bit later, where it's, there's toxicity on both sides. There's bad blood and culture on both sides. I mean, I had both sides giving me a hard time today, not just people on the left, but people on the right too. And I'm okay with that. I mean, that's part of this process. It's part of what we're doing here. And that does not intimidate me. But I think to answer your question, yeah, I'm running completely as a Republican. I'm going to obviously follow the rules. I'm certainly, open to suggestions and ideas from people, but I haven't really decided on the flavor. I think that's part of the problem. We've got so much division even in our own party, Joey. We've got all of these different flavors, and we have some really conservative folks that feel like they're not being heard. We have some moderate Republicans that feel like they're not being heard. So, yeah, I think we're in for an interesting ride this time around, Joey, just with philosophy, ideas, and party.
And not to monopolize your town hall here, but the flavor of Republican going to be okay. The Constitution is still the Constitution.
Yep.
And this year, our current governor vetoed the Second Amendment Protection Act amendments bill.
Mm-hmm.
So the only question I have is, would you have also vetoed that bill? Why or why not? Because that's a constitutional issue, a liberty issue for all of us, not just a Republican-Democrat issue.
Yeah. So my answer is probably a little bit more simplistic than you're wanting, Joey. But I really believe that the way we need to approach the Second Amendment is stop legislating it and literally say, we recognize the Second Amendment and we recognize that there may be consequences to that. It's pretty black and white to me. What we are doing right now by just continuously, I'm going to call it legislating freedom, Joey. That's what I'm going to call it. Since I'm pro Second Amendment, 100%, I would sign something like that. That being said, I also understand why, if you read why he didn't do it, it makes logical sense on paper why he did what he did. But for me, I go a step further and say, let's just stop legislating our rights. Because really what it is it's permission-based freedom. In order for us to actually have the Second Amendment rights, let's just have Second Amendment rights. I know that's probably really simple, Joey, but that's what we need to do. Because what we've got now is this just layers and layers and layers and layers and layers of legislation that tells us what we can and cannot do with our Second Amendment rights. So that's kind of where I come from on that. Thanks for the question, Joey. I'm going to go back to questions that I've got online here. Okay, let me just back up here. I've got Brian asked, and I love this question. I've actually heard this question a couple of times by people. How can we convince younger generations that they can have a prosperous career in life in Wyoming and not seek their fortunes elsewhere? Well, I think there's a couple of things that we can do. First of all, I'm not going to get too deep into this. We need to make sure that they can get the kind of education in Wyoming that they need to succeed in Wyoming. I think that that's really important. Most of our students, when they graduate, need to be able to read and write, and they need to be career ready. And we need to provide that to them. We have a lot of jobs available in Wyoming, but we're not creating a very great bridge on getting them there. Now, we do have programs for that. And by the way, I think it's getting better. And with the Department of Education most of it being dismantled, not all of it, there are some programs I think that are going to end up staying. But with most of it, we should have more freedom in Wyoming to create some of those, to fill some of those gaps so that they do want to stay here and give them a vision for staying here. The other thing is do we have the types of jobs that they're interested in as the future generation? And I would say this, and I know people have mixed feelings about this with the data centers and the nuclear power plant and some of these other opportunities that we have coming to Wyoming. Some of these jobs may be great jobs for Wyoming kids that are growing up. They could get into these high-paying jobs in these fields, and a lot of them are interested in technology-related jobs. And so having more technological jobs in Wyoming, because there's a lot of interest in that, I think would be great for the future of keeping our younger generations, here in Wyoming. I also know that a lot of our kids leave, or people leave, but then they come back. And there's a lot of that going on right now because they're finding out that the grass is truly not greener on the other side of the fence. Because along with those high-paying, interesting jobs comes all of the stress of living in the cities, comes all living in those big cities, where a 400 square foot apartment costs $5,000. And so they are finding out that there are better opportunities and there are future opportunities in Wyoming. So I think that there's that. I think obviously the expansion of our energy and our rare mineral resources are all great ways to keep people here in Wyoming and give them interesting jobs that are exciting and fresh and new. Along with supporting obviously our farms and ranches and our classical agriculture and everything else that we have here. And so I think that that's a way that we can do that. Does our economy need diversification? Brian also asked this question. We're working on that. I think we've been stifled, you guys. I think we can all agree that we have been stifled in progress by rules and regulations, and not just by the state and counties here in Wyoming, but also, in addition to that, also by our federal government, which has just really put the handcuffs on so many of our industries and ideas. So in order to free up our economy and diversify it, which I can't, especially with the rare earth minerals, with energy, with tourism that we have here to offer in Wyoming, we can absolutely find ways to diversify and to increase our revenues, and maybe even find ways so that we can eventually, lower those taxes that we have here in Wyoming as well, which I know a lot of people are interested in. Janet asked about outside influences. As governor, will you support the people of Wyoming outside of influences of MAGA or the Freedom Caucus or anybody else? Well, I will say a couple of things to this. First of all, Wyoming elected the Freedom Caucus. So whether we like them or not, Wyoming did elect them. And so the people of Wyoming did that, and therefore that is in reflection, at least a part of the people's voice. And so we have to do that. But you know what? I think one of the things that we have done, or we tend to do, is we tend to legislate national issues, and we spend a lot of time on issues that are in the lobby, and we don't spend enough time on Wyoming. And I think one of the things for me as governor, if I were elected as governor, is I want to spend a lot more time on Wyoming. And I know it's hard to do that when the noise at the federal level is so high. And also keep in mind, we're in a time of grace right now, right? We're in a time when we've got a president who supports conservative values and ideas. We want to try to get some of that stuff done while he's president, because guess what? You guys, I hate to say this, but in 3 or 4 years, we could have a changing of the guard again in the presidency, and we could be back where we started here in Wyoming. That's why it's important that we get some of this legislation done to reinforce what the Trump administration is doing, so that if and when, obviously the Trump administration will go away, what are we left with as Wyoming? And so that's really, really important. So hopefully that helps with your question as well. Okay, let's go to, I've got Tamara asked a whole bunch of questions about teacher pay and education and class sizes and things like that. And I'm not going to try to completely unpack education in this quick 1 hour Ask Me Anything session. You guys can look on my YouTube channel. Just go to Joseph4wy.com and go onto my YouTube channel. You'll see I posted a couple of videos about education. But here's a couple of things that I know that are the facts. Education cost is going like this, and results are going quite literally in the opposite direction. And so that is something that we have to take a serious look at and an honest look at as people, citizens in Wyoming, and as individuals. Now, I'm just going to admit, right here, I'm a homeschool dad, and we take advantage of one of Wyoming's school choice programs that already existed before this current legislative session. We have our kids in Tech Prep. And so while our kids do all the state testing and things like that, we homeschool our kids, we have a teacher, and it works out really, really well. So I think we've got to look at education, look at where the numbers are going and going, well, we got some of the highest paid teachers in the country. Our results are also good in comparison with the country, but the results are still not good. And so we need to address that. That could be done with class sizes and teacher pay and things like that. We already pay our teachers pretty well, just so you know, on a national scale. Class sizes, certainly. With some of the new legislation that we've seen recently, perhaps class sizes will go down. And we'll have an opportunity to get those teacher to student ratios into a better place. But also remember, we got a lot of administration burdening the teachers, or burdening teaching in general, Maybe we can look at eliminating a lot of that administration, get more teachers in the classroom so that we can lower those classroom rates. So there's a lot of ideas and things that we could do there with that. B asked, she is a senior citizen, and she asked me, well, a lot of us are living on fixed incomes. We're seeing property taxes go up. We're on Social Security. They're seeing their lives sort of vanish before them. But I would argue this point with you all. And by the way, thank you for everyone that's watching, commenting, things like that. I would argue this point with you all, and that is this. It's not just our seniors and those of our older folks or senior citizens on Social Security that are on fixed incomes, you guys. I live on a fixed income. Now, I'm 45 years old. I have 3 kids. I'm married, live just outside of Cheyenne. And I go to work every day, and I produce a certain amount of income every single month for that work. Now, I'm a business owner, but I don't. My business is not my cash cow. I make a salary. I live on that, but most families live on that. So all of us live on some sort of a fixed income that is challenged when we see property taxes endlessly going up. And you can go on my website, go on my YouTube channel again, and see what I say about property taxes. In a nutshell, the goal needs to be, first of all, to stop messing with property taxes, because what we're not getting is solutions. What we're getting is a promise that they're going to mess with property taxes for the rest of our lives. What we need to do, even though I know there's a lot of pushback on this at the state level and going, we can't do this, we don't have the resources to do this, we need to just stop it altogether. We need to stop taxing people on unrealized gains. I mean, that's one of the big things. And I know there are those that will say, well, we're not taxing you on unrealized gains. I disagree with that respectfully. When you're raising property taxes every single year, and I'm not pulling that cash out of my house, you're taxing me on an unrealized gain. That's hurt my family. If you're watching, that's probably hurt your family. We need to come up with an actual solution that addresses the root of the problem and not keep throwing Band-Aids on it. So hopefully that answers your question there. Let's see. What else have I got here? So Gene asked me kind of a funny question. This is a little more, not a funny question, a little lighthearted. I want you to end Trump derangement syndrome, TDS. Everybody, sometimes we put our hope in the wrong places. And we put our hope in the people that we elect. We put our hope in the ideas that we elect. And, we live in a free country. And folks that disagree with the conservative values and disagree with Trump, they're allowed to do that, you guys. They're allowed to not like anything he does or anything that any of his policies that they like. And we can call it whatever we want, Trump derangement syndrome or whatever we want. But the bottom line is what we're doing by using language like that is we're not building a bridge. We're burning it. So one of the things that I'm doing, and as I'm running for governor, and if you look on my About page on my website, you'll see what you're going to get from me an awful lot is what I stand for and who I stand for, not who I'm against or what I'm against. And the reason for that is not because I don't have a backbone or a spine. It's because I think it's time for us to start building bridges instead of burning them. It's time for us to start being where we can sit down at the table with people we don't agree with, have a conversation, maybe come up with but that we can walk away from that table and not eviscerate each other on social media. Be kind, be civil, and still be friends at the end of the day. These are the kind of values that I bring to my run as governor. And so the Trump derangement syndrome, sorry, I'm not God. I'm not a magic maker. I can't make that go away. But what I want to do is I want to listen. I want to listen to folks on both sides, regardless. And you know what? There are things I'm never going to agree with the left on, but I'm also not super proud of some things that have happened on the right. And if we're all being honest, and that could be the people that Wyoming has sent to the Congress, that could be a governor, that could be whatever. We're not going to make everybody happy, you guys. So for those of you that are watching this, don't put your hope and trust in me. Even if you elect me as your governor, if I have 100 conservatives in the room, I guarantee you 25 of them are probably not going to be happy, right? Because we're human beings. We can't make everybody happy. And so I think that that's a really, really important issue. Jody asked about green energy and about protecting our lands. First of all, we know that green energy is not so green, right, you guys? So whether it's solar power or wind power or the cost of electric vehicles, these things are not so green when you get done with them, right? Solar panels are highly toxic to the environment. What do we do with these when we get done with them, right? We're putting all of our windmill blades into coal mines in Wyoming right now. That's what we've decided to do with them because you can't do anything else with them. My solution for the windmill blades is I think we ought to ask Elon Musk if we can just launch them into space and get rid of them somewhere. That may or may not be a good idea either, you guys, but really we have to address these issues. I think that a lot of our green energy solutions just aren't where they need to be yet. They're too toxic for the environment. They're too expensive to erect. They're not as green as we think they are. I mean, these windmills, for instance, and the number of our beautiful wildlife that get killed by the windmills, and me being a conservationist, not an environmentalist, but a conservationist, I think we really need to look at the cost of green energy. And we also need to look at what are the things that we could do to get real good energy without actually the cost of destroying our planet, because we're just deferring it, right? You guys, here in America, we don't see the lithium mines, the big mines that are destroying other parts of the globe, for our addiction to green energy. And so I think we need to count the cost on that. With that, I do want to go back to the guys, John and Joey, that are in the room with me. Did you guys have anything I've talked about, anything you guys want to bring to the table at this point?
I'll do one.
Okay, John, what have you got for me?
It's about term limits. So you have term limits as a governor.
Yeah.
The legislature and your appointed justices don't. So what's your view on having term limits for legislators and those appointed judges? Mm-hmm. Voting is not an option.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, John. So for those of you who maybe, if you could not hear him over Zoom right now asking me, he said, what is my view on term limits? And I will tell you what I know. The founding fathers never intended for us to be living in a world where being a politician, by the way, I don't consider myself a politician. I guess, Joey, I'm probably considered a politician now, right? Since I'm running for governor. But it was never meant to be a career. Or if you were in a position, maybe you do move to a different position where you can be used better or more efficiently. So yeah, my answer to term limits, John, is I think that term limits ought to exist across the board while allowing people to grow up through government if they want to, right? Like maybe you're a legislator for so many years, but that doesn't term you out from being able to be Secretary of State, right? Doesn't term you out from being able to go to the Senate of the United States or to go to the House, or Congress, or to have some role, in the federal government or the local government. But I am 100% for term limits. And here's primary reason why. And we don't have this fully in the ways that we should. The primary reason why is because I think we can't necessarily get the best representation for the people without them, because the people change. And I think that when you have term limits, it allows people like me to run for governor of Wyoming because I can do this in America, because I'm allowed to do this. Regular people can do that. So don't make it harder for us. And so, yeah, I'm for the term limits. And I know there's even a rumor that Wyoming's current governor is potentially going to challenge our current term limit rules for governor, which is 2 terms. And there are rumors, of course, it's all hearsay, it's media stuff, that he might challenge that. I don't know. I don't know how that will end up in court, but he may be able to run for a 3rd term if he decides to do so. And the court says, well, guess what? We've decided this isn't legal and you can go ahead and do that. But yeah, I'm in favor of that, John, because I think it's healthy for the nation. I think it's healthy for the state.
Thanks.
Yeah. Joey, did you have anything else?
Well, since this isn't a debate, I'll leave my term limits at the door. But Correct information for the people. There are no term limits on governor. There's a restriction on serving more than 8 years in any 16-year period.
Right. Right.
That could be challenged in court.
Yes.
Let's move away from the governor and just talk about elected representation.
Yeah.
Do you support the concept of having an elected attorney general for the state of Wyoming?
Oh, great question, Joey. That is a very good question. I haven't had enough time to digest that, Joey. I'm going to lean towards saying, let the people decide. The one hesitation that I have to that, Joey, is I think any governor, whether it's me or somebody else, really likes to be able to get things done, right? And if the governor can appoint some of these positions, he's obviously going to appoint people who, for the most part, will support what he was elected for, right? I think that you could run the risk. I shouldn't say risk because you trust the people with these decisions, right, Joey? But let's say, for instance, you get, I'm just going to use this as an example, super conservative, simple sort of approach to government, Joseph elected as governor. And then you get an attorney general who is the complete opposite and would like to just legislate the world to death and let's just make new rules and new laws for everything, or would support those ideologies or support that idea. It'd be really hard to get a lot of stuff done, I think. Now, obviously, legislation comes from the legislators and things like that, and I understand that, but I think you'd get a mixed bag with that. Ultimately, I'm a people person, Joey, so I would have to go with, you know what? If the people want to elect their attorney general, the people elect their attorney general. That's going to be my answer. Yeah, that's going to be my answer. If the people push for that, then the people should have that because we are a government. We, the people. I mean, that's where it all starts at the federal level, right? And if that's what the people want, then that's what the people should have. And regardless of my personal preference, if the people want to elect their attorney general, the people should elect their attorney general. Hopefully that is a good. I had to think about that a little bit, Joey, because there are pros and cons to that. But the bottom line is the people are what matter, and therefore the people, if that's what they want, that's what they should get. Hopefully that answered your question, Joey. And, John, any other questions? Otherwise, I'll go back to what I've got here on my wonderful piece of paper here. Okay. All right, cool. I'll go ahead and continue. So Alexis asked me about concerns of immigration. You know, if you guys look at my campaign, you'll see that I have 4 pillars: faith, family, freedom, and the future. You know, when it comes to my faith, it informs me, you know, that Jesus told me to take care of the stranger in my land, you know, and to be good to them. But that also you don't want to cast your pearls before swine. And by the way, I'm not saying any of these people are swine, but there are different principles in the Bible that do apply to immigration. And what I want to say with that is come here legally. You know, we have a wonderful, beautiful system to get here. I have friends, by the way, around the world, and they all want to come to America because America is still, you guys, in spite of our challenges, this shining light on a hill or on a mountain. So when it comes to immigration, follow the process, get through the process, do it right, and be here and be a part of our culture. Speak English, get a good job, live the American dream. I'm 100% for that. But I think that there is a great illustration, you guys. I want you guys to look this up. Just look up the YouTube video, the gumball illustration of immigration. It's a really cool, like 6-minute video from years ago that explains why our immigration process, the way it's been allowed for the last couple of years, is destroying the fabric of our nation. And we need to put that back together and have responsible immigration policy. Listen, I've been on mission trip. I've been on 50 mission trips to Mexico. I've been on mission trips to Africa. I've been on mission trips to Korea. I've been around the world. I've seen how people live and why they want to come to America. I get that. But we cannot take on all of the world's problems. The other thing we cannot do is just attract all the world's brightest. And you'll see that from the gumball example, if you guys look that up on YouTube. When we attract all the world's brightest, these other countries are then losing their opportunity to grow and become more like America. And so there's a lot to unpack when it comes to immigration. Hopefully that kind of helps you understand where I come from. I absolutely love people. I love people from around the world. I really, really do. But we have to do immigration in a responsible way so that it doesn't destroy the fabric of our country, whether it's our education system, our medical systems, our roads, I mean, everything, jobs. We have to be responsible with it. So that's kind of my brief thoughts on immigration. It's a much deeper issue than what this hour will afford, but hopefully that answers that question. With that, let me see what other questions I have here from the public that they asked me to today. All right. So this is a hot button topic that I'm going to talk about right now, and that is the LGBTQIA rights. This is actually one of the only things that I actually put some notes on because I had a conversation with somebody the other day about this. And so I do have notes on this particular topic. And the reason that I did that is because I really want to convey my heart to the people of Wyoming. And it is this: as governor, obviously, the job of a governor is not to just represent the group of people that elected me in a district, but it is to truly represent all of the people of Wyoming in a fair and balanced way. And honestly, obviously, there's going to be ideologies that I don't agree with, that I will never agree with or support. But I want to remind everybody of this when it comes to the folks in the LGBTQIA community, and that is this: they are granted all of the same rights under the Constitution of the United States, under the Wyoming Constitution, under the Bill of Rights, as me, as you or me, as all of us as well. They have those same rights. Part of the reason why those rights have been disenfranchised is because of the pushing of ideas on others. And I know we all do that, whether I'm Joseph as governor or that we have our ideas and we do tell and share those with others. But I will tell you this and what I know of this. And I'm going to get both personal and gubernatorial on you with this. Okay. So I'm going to talk about two things. Number one is that I think all of our lives are affected by this issue in one way, shape, or form. And most people like me, I'm a conservative, I'm a Christian, I love God. I know what the Bible says about these issues. I know that Jesus also broke bread with people that he didn't agree with. He loved them and he didn't approve or accept of what their lifestyle was. And that's something that we've confused as a modern society. Love and acceptance, we've equated the two as the same, and they are not. I can love you. And by the way, if any of you are watching right now and that is your lifestyle, most Christians like me, we have no problem loving you, but we do not accept the way that you live. But you need to know the difference of that. And that's what's created, I think, a great rift and a misunderstanding, the difference between love and acceptance. The other thing is too, and I'm just going to say it like it is, you guys, most folks don't really care about the personal decisions that you make in your bedroom. But the minute you take that outside of the bedroom and you try to push that on a society, you start to have problems. I really don't. It doesn't really, what you decide to do in your adult life and in your lifestyle is your choice, whether I agree with it or not. The bottom line is that I represent all the people of Wyoming. I don't agree with those values or those alignments, but I'm not going to accept that lifestyle as something that God would have for you, but I can still love you and I can still listen to you and I can still hear your point of view and I can still have some understanding for where you're coming from without agreeing with that lifestyle. So that's a tough topic, but I'm willing to tackle it. There's obviously more to it than that, but I do want to move on. When does life start? Women's rights. This is a question from Tamara. Another important question about another important position that someone needs to take. My belief is going to be that aligns with the typical true conservative, but also a Christian man, which is that life begins at conception, regardless of how it begins. And I can obviously get into all of the different reasons, but that is my based stance on the issue of abortion. And if you want to talk more about that, feel free to reach out to me. I'm not scared to have more discussion about that, but life begins at conception, and that life is an individual. I think it's important that I denote that, and that person, that individual should then have the rights that those of us that are outside breathing air have the rights. You are not going to call, an elephant inside of a mama elephant. You're going to call that a baby elephant even though it's not born. We give these rights to animals. We ought to also recognize that is an individual from conception that God has designed and created. So that is my response to the issue of abortion. Doge. I've got a question here about Doge from Tamara as well. You know what? It's rough, it's rowdy, it's dirty, but it needs to be done. We need to do this at every level of government and every place across the country, whether it's local government, county, state, city. We've got to go line by line and look at what we're doing with people's tax dollars, with the hard-earned tax dollars of people of Wyoming, making sure that those tax dollars are getting returned to them in a way that's meaningful and that we're not wasteful. I am going to say a couple of things to this, though. A, we have the lowest tax burden in Wyoming in just about the entire nation to start. B, we do not have the level of fraud and disenfranchisement and misuse of taxpayers' funds in Wyoming that we do in the federal government. And that's a bigger problem for a bigger day for another video. Do those problems exist? Yes, absolutely. I'm confident that they do. And the fear mongering around property tax reductions and like it's the end of the world and the sky is falling it's not truth. It's just something that politicians use to scare people into submission. And we don't need to be doing that. We shouldn't be doing that. So that is kind of my response to Doge. With that, I want to go back to the room to Joey and John, and we're actually about 10 minutes to the top of the hour. I'm trying to see if I've got a couple more questions here on the paper from folks that sent me questions. Do you guys have anything else that's come to mind based on my thought? Okay, I see Joey's shaking his head. John, did you have any other thoughts that came to your mind as I was talking about these other issues? And you'll need to unmute. Nope. Okay. John is good too. So I've got a couple more questions here. I know some of you are actually commenting on my live stream right now. I'm going to try, or at least attempt, to see if I can pick questions that are there, and I'm happy to take a look at that as well. So with that, I've got a question here. Easy question for me, actually. How do you feel about selling United States land to foreign countries? Keyword, United States land. I think it should belong to people in the United States. So that's a pretty simple question for me to answer. U.S. land needs to belong to people in the United States. And then whatever they decide, obviously, to do with that should be their property rights, right, you guys? So we should go ahead and do that. Let me see what else. I just want to make sure I've got keeping Wyoming. I brought my family here to Wyoming, you guys, for a reason. I want my kids to be able to go to the bunkhouse here in Cheyenne, which we do on a relatively regular basis, and we sing the national anthem and we put our hands over our hearts. And I want them to be able to see people who actually love their country. And I believe that that's at the core of what Wyoming is. In order for us to keep that, we have got to start unwinding this massive ball of burdensome government that we've put on the people of Wyoming at all levels. Whether it's your healthcare, and we've got to give doctors permission to use ivermectin. Our doctors can't just make doctor decisions, or our head medical professionals can't make that decision. We have to legislate that. We need to return these things back to the people and stop having our legislated freedoms. That's how we keep Wyoming at the core of the issue, I think. But there's another side to that, and the people also need to be willing to say, hey, Mr. Government, I know we've given you these responsibilities for the last 3 decades. We want to take some of these responsibilities back. So there is two sides to that. The people are going to need to be willing to take those responsibilities on, and let's get those freedoms back to the people and have the government stop having their fingers in it. So I think that's part of how you keep Wyoming. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but you got to start unwinding the burden that we've put on everyone in the state. And so I think there's that. With that, I have actually got, I'm going to see, I think I answered all of the questions that were provided to me from the great folks in the Cheyenne area for today. I'm just going to double check here real quick to make sure that I did answer all of those questions. And it looks like I did. So with that, I'm going to take a quick look, you guys, while you guys are watching, I'm going to take a quick look on my social media to see if any of you did post questions. And I'm going to try to answer some of those questions while we get up here to the top of the hour. I want to say thank you to everyone that's watching. You guys are like, oh, wow, maybe you enjoyed this, maybe you didn't. I don't know. Feel free to reach out to me. The best way to reach out to me is to go to Joseph, the number 4, WY.com. That's Joseph, the number 4, WY.com. You'll see my phone number. You can text me. You can call me. You can email me on there. You can follow me on all of my social media channels and interact with me there as well. So I really, really encourage you. Reach out to me. If you had a concern about something that you saw today or that you heard today, let's talk about it. If you had something that you liked and thought, wow, that was something new that I haven't heard before, and that was fresh and original, let's go ahead and talk about it. I really, really do want to meet you. I want to hear from you. Obviously, we have some needs as a campaign. You can go to my website. You can go to the Get Involved. You could check out the different things that you can get involved in. If you're like, I enjoyed that today. I'd love to get you involved. Love to have you on our campaign team. We've already got a growing team across the state. And if you want to be a part of that exciting team, we would absolutely love to have you with that. So I'm going to run over here real quick. I've got about 8 minutes to the top of the hour. I'm going to take a real quick look on my social channels to just see if any of you asked any questions beyond what I already answered today, and see if I can go ahead and get some more of those questions answered for you. Got about 7 minutes to the top of the hour here. So I'm going to hop over real quick and take a look and see if there are any questions. I'm sure some of you did post and did ask questions. I've got like a million notifications right now in my box, so bear with me here real quick. I'm going to take a look. All right, we've got some likes. We've got some comments on a different post, but not on the live stream. I'm just looking for comments on the live stream right now, you guys. If any of you commented and I haven't seen your comment, feel free to just message me directly. I'll also check that as well. Okay. All right, cool. It looks like we're pretty clean on comments. We had a whole bunch of people watching. I'm not seeing a ton of comments. Hopefully I answered some questions for you all today and that you felt this is beneficial and just a good Ask Me Anything. Also, on that note, you guys, I'm going to have one of these like every couple of weeks. So if you want to get on, you want to ask me questions, you want to hop on Zoom like Joey and John did today and ask me some questions, feel free to do that. I'm here for you. So with that, I just want to say thank you. Thank you to everybody for watching, for engaging, for being involved. I got a ton of likes here and a ton of shares I see here on Facebook with this live stream. So I really appreciate those of you that interacted, both in the positive way and in the negative way. I really appreciate you all. And thanks for being involved. I look forward to seeing you guys next time. Check out my event page for upcoming events on my website. That's Joseph, the number 4, WY.com. I got tons of events coming up, you guys. Community days, Ask Me Anything days. I'll be at a couple of things up in Laramie next month. If you guys want to see me at Charlie Kirk's event, we could get together there and things like that. So anyways, totally rambling on at this point. Thank you for coming. I'll see you all later. Good night, Wyoming.